I can do anything I want, but I have to do it in a way that doesn't interrupt Clint.
Today, we're on a farm in the south of France. Why? Cinematographer Tom Stern did invite us into his home for a chat. And we brought a little gift. This is a Kodak Retina reflex from the late 60s. The same model as Tom Stern's first own camera.
This is truly a blast from the past. Let's see, 60, 40, 58 years. Wow, well that's extremely kind of you. Thank you very, very, very much.
You're very welcome.
Wow, I'm going to have to do a little bit of a
Put this over here.
revision here. I guess it's the way it mediated the capture of light and made a moment permanent that I found pretty fascinating as I guess a 14-year-old. And then you'd sort of develop film and destroy most of it, and occasionally you'd get images, and it was pretty, I found it pretty compelling. I'm sure it was a gift from my father. I didn't have those resources at a 14-year-old. And I've just been fortunate to have worked with some really great people. And in spite of what you may hear, nobody has ever made a film alone. So there's a lot of people involved. So it creates opportunity to participate in that milieu. I've had some really great, I guess you'd call mentors or masters. Conrad was like a pure emotional animal. I probably err on the analytic side, and he showed me pathways to express things through lighting and just trying to work for him and keep up with him. It was I think it helped me get sort of to a middle place, and it was just an honor to work with him. I think we did 3 films together, and 2 of which he won the Academy Award for in cinematography. And really, I think of him probably every day. And oftentimes, if I'm sort of getting into a bind, my break glass in case of fire is like, shit, what would Conrad do? And that's sort of like a little mantra. It's actually a little more complicated than that. Conrad had become ill during the filming of Road to Perdition, and shortly there, after we finished filming it, he passed away. And I felt that my career as a gaffer, chief lighting technician, had kind of reached a point of fullness, and just figured I'd do something else, like sculpture or God knows what, onions, lettuce, carrots. And just sort of simultaneously, Clint called up and asked if I'd shoot his next film. I said, well, I'm flattered, and I can only see 2 problems. And number 1, I'm not in a union, and 2, I'm not a cameraman, I don't know anything about it. And he said, well, don't worry about the union, we'll get that straightened out. And secondly, it seems for the last 20 years you've been paying attention, so I'm not too worried about it. And then I said, well, can I have a day to think about it? And he was mildly annoyed in a good-natured way and said, yeah, call me back tomorrow. Statistically, I was likely to fail, and I'd have to leave in shame and humiliation, but I'd already basically left anyway, so there wasn't much of a downside. It's a great debt I owe Clint, because the job is great and fine and wonderful, but it's actually like when you push the reset button on a computer and it sort of reboots the next job, suddenly it's like I'm a 24-year-old, because it tends to focus your attention a little bit. Another great influence for me was a gentleman named Bruce Surtees. Bruce was a really underappreciated genius, and Clint met him as a camera operator, and then Bruce shot a whole whack of Clint's movies. And I got to meet Bruce and became his gaffer, and Bruce taught me a tremendous amount of stuff in general, but also working with Bruce and Clint. I learned what Clint liked. And Bruce was, I think at one point he was called the Prince of Darkness. And it was simple enough. A lot of times people have difficulty understanding things that are simple, and Clint likes deep blacks, and which is really, you can't be simpler than that. One secret to getting deep blacks is use hard light, which Bruce taught me a lot about using hard light, which I guess is not a real common thing these days. That it's sort of the actor's performance is primordial first. And that's my responsibility, is more or less to try to make all the technical stuff go away. So it's really great if the cameras always work, and it's like really good if stuff's in focus, and it's really good if we don't have to have reshoot. So all of which is pretty simple and pretty logical if you think about it, if those are your goals. That's just priorities again. If you want to make it a temple of like cameras and lenses and filters and stuff, you can do that. Or if you want to make it about performance, you do that. I like staying abreast of all the developments. There's a whole lot of kind of energy, but I mean, basically what we're doing is the same thing that man did 4,000 years ago when he's telling a story around a fireplace. And nothing's changed. Well, I guess it's the idea about picking out appropriate and robust tools. So we're pretty careful about that. There's the leading edge of technology, and then there's the bleeding edge. And I'm not particularly interested in the bleeding edge. The bleeding edge I'll fiddle with in testing and such, but if once we have a schedule, I'm not particularly interested in the bleeding edge unless it's something like incredibly exceptional and like one shot that is like dear to the director's heart, and then we'll like block out enough time. I'm thinking of like cable cams and weird stuff like that. It just takes a lot of time. But otherwise, if you know, we always have a spare camera body, and we typically with me, I'll just have one set of prime lenses for a couple of cameras, and the lenses have been great lately. We haven't had any problems. I tend to go right down the middle, and I like anamorphic. A lot of my work is anamorphic because of Clint, but also I like the way it lets you. I like the width of the frame because then you can be over someone's shoulder and doing a tight shot on the other person. And there's not so much choice available in the anamorphic format. The Zeiss anamorphics have been very reliable and probably a little too good, but I can fix that. I would rather have a lens that's, and I know it seems strange for a lens to be too sharp, but I would prefer to have like a universal lens that's a little too sharp. I mean, the other thing that'd be like super cool would be like a killer kick-ass variable focus prime. I didn't say zoom, did you notice? Because I'm a purist. It would save a lot of time if there wasn't a huge weight penalty. But maybe a T4 18 millimeter to 80. If that, I mean, I don't know what that would look like, but that could be pretty great. And you just, you know, I don't get any joy out of watching the assistants change lenses. Well, I like the conformist a lot. Bertolucci's thing. Also, I think the work of Roy Andersson is absolutely genius. I recommend it heartily to everybody. And I gave one to Clint. He gave back to me the next day. He's like, oh God. I seriously commend it because it is so dry and smart. It's really cinematic, I mean, I like Tarkovsky also, I mean, almost anything that he's done. I feel very, very fortunate, and my job, I think, at the core is to help a director tell his story, and the tools I can help him with are visual tools, like sort of image and lighting, basically, and maybe kinetics, because it's, you know, motion. And the job is like really super cool, and I feel like one of these basketball players that gets paid $50 million a year, because I'm very well taken care of, and I've got basically all the resources a guy could dream of, whatever you need to help tell the story tool-wise. And I've been able to sort of deflect it in a way that I've had opportunities to work with all sorts of different crews, Japanese crews, Chinese crews, Polish crews, French crews, English crews, and you just get to meet a lot of different people around the world. And that to me has been probably one of the greatest kind of job-related experiences